What's going on, everyone? Josh Rzepka here, and welcome to the 6th installment where I spoke with 17 world-class trumpeters. In each of these videos, I present one question, and then you hear that question answered by all 17 trumpet players. As a reminder, here's who I spoke with in order of appearance in today's video. Lessie Vonner, Bijon Watson, Karin Bliznik, Jose Sibaja, Pacho Flores, Lynch, Bria Skonberg, Michael Sachs, Tage Larsen, Ingrid Jensen, Rampton, Roger Ingram, Selina Ott, Coletti, Tine Helseth, Brecker, and Arturo Sandoval. Now, they say that hindsight is 20/20, and it's easy to think that all these fantastic musicians that we admire didn't go through their own personal struggles, but that is not the case. As growing musicians and individuals, so often we are not ready to hear the advice until we go through that process, until we make the mistakes, and until we grow as an individual and a musician. Only then is the answer clear as day. And that is why I asked the following question. What advice would you give to a younger version of yourself? Their answers are filled with so much insight and wisdom. I know that we will all benefit greatly. So I hope you're ready to sit back, relax, and be inspired. That's enough of an introduction. Let's hear what everyone had to say.
I just have to pick one. It would be tell my younger self that it's okay to do what makes what feels good to you. That's why, because unfortunately it was my experience coming up through high school and college that to play, in my case, jazz, because I studied as a jazz musician primarily, that jazz looks this certain, there's this image of jazz that everybody's trying to be, and if you don't fit into that image, then you're not a legit jazz musician, or it's like you're doing wrong and this, that, and the third. So, not that what I did wasn't good or sounding good, but there was other things, because for me, I like a lot of different types of music. Like, I like playing funk, I like playing pop, and all the intricacies that is contemporary music as a whole. But I feel like I went out of myself to try to be a part of this image, and then the moment I was just like, "You know what? I'm just gonna do, what feels good, what sounds good," everything opened up for me. So, yeah, tell myself, it's okay to do what you wanna do.
I would tell my younger self to practice more. Don't take for granted the time you have as you're learning the instrument to practice more. Also, don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no stupid questions. If you don't know and you're afraid to ask, you could end up in a situation in a recording session or on a gig where you will fail miserably. And unfortunately, those are situations that are don't allow for very much margin for error. So my younger self, I'll tell a story. I went through. This is going to sound stupid. I went through up until maybe my sophomore year of high school, junior year. So I've been playing for about 6, 7 years at that point, without knowing what concert pitch was. Like when they would say concert B, I mean, I knew if they say concert B flat, play a C, but why was it? I never knew why, what that was, right? So when I found out, I'm like, are you kidding me? I just and I was afraid to ask because I didn't want to say, hey, what does that mean? For whatever reason. I mean, you're a kid, right? But that's no excuse. But even so, um, obviously it hadn't been explained to me in any of my music classes, right? So I just said, "Oh, concert B flat. If it's C on the trumpet, okay, but why?" You know what I mean? So never be afraid to ask questions. I think that would be, um, and study with more teachers. You'd be surprised. Your heroes are more approachable than you think they are.
This is going to be my feel good moment. So I think the younger version of myself probably would need to hear that you are not the trumpet and that People will love you whether you play the trumpet or not. You are a person that plays the trumpet. It is a thing that you do. It is not who you are. Plain and simple. We get so caught up in it being our identity that when things do go wrong, which inevitably, as far as I know from the people that have much more wisdom than me, that most every person will go through something like that in their career if they're planning to have a career in this job. And I think it's twice as scary when you feel like it's actually you versus when it's something that you do and you can still identify in the social capacity that everyone else is, and appreciate that people appreciate you just for who you are, regardless of whether or not you play the trumpet. I know that sounds so intense, but I just think that there's a lack of mental health awareness at a young age where it's, you know, perfectionism, it is lack of compassion. And those two things, I think, can really affect someone's mental development into getting, when you get to a later age and realizing maybe you need to separate yourself. It's a little hard to do that, but trying to be aware of it as like more of a task of something, a hobby or something that you really enjoy doing, and not it be everything of who you are. You know, learning how to be in that industry, how to not be so affected by things, how to deal with the different stresses in ways that don't cause you to melt down. And this is just being real, because I think it's harder than people think it is, to really stay in the zone of really loving what you do. And I think by loving yourself first is truly how you do that.
To look at the music as more as a business, you know, and as a career at an earlier age. Number one. Number two, to focus more in harmonic instruments like the piano or the guitar or anything that will provide a different focus on the way you visualize music at an earlier age. And number three, to never stop one day working on my ear training. You know, I've given it breaks here and there, and not that I feel like, like I am anywhere with my ear training, because you're never anywhere. You're always learning and learning and learning. Even if you have perfect pitch, you're always learning. But it's super important. I think that we are as good as our ears are in music, and so those are probably the three things that I would talk to myself earlier.
Patience. That's it. Paciencia. Patience. Everything will come. Yeah.
I think I would advise my younger self to not take things so seriously, but take things more seriously. And maybe I'll have to take the rest of the day today figuring out what exactly that means. Also, though, not being so hard on oneself. I think just now, I'm getting to the point where I can really accept myself. It's always been very hard for me to listen to my playing. Maybe I'd say that. Maybe I'd say, all those cassettes that you're recording, and I've got millions of them. You're never going to listen to them. I can tell you that. Why don't you listen to them? Don't wait until 30 years later, like you are now, because I've been listening to myself more now, and gritting my teeth and just seeing all the good stuff and all the flaws, all the missed opportunities that I could have jumped on to correct that thing here or correct that thing there if I just would have confronted it. You have to confront yourself, warts and all. I mean, I definitely have done that at different times in my development and accepted myself, but I think there's always like different levels of doing that. I'm hoping that I can get to the place before, while I still have the ability to play at, a level that I think is close to what I've been capable of through my life. And I'm lucky that I think that, I haven't lost my chops yet, and that I'm playing still at a level close to, if not as high as I ever have been. So I think the rest of it is just becoming comfortable, accepting that, it is what it is. And, that just move on to the next thing, embrace the imperfections. It's not as good as you think it is when you think it's good, and it's not as bad as you think it is when you think it's bad. You have to accept both of those things together. And actually, if you want it's not as bad as you think it is, you have to accept it's not as good as you think it is. If you can do that together, you might be on the road to something. And I think that's absolutely true.
I would like to tell myself to not judge so harshly what you are playing. Just notice what you do. So even when you're practicing, you play something, immediately many of us go, oh, that doesn't sound good. It doesn't matter if it sounds good or not. That has, what I think of how it sounds has no positive effect on what is going to happen. I just have to notice, is my tone fuzzy? Well, what could the reasons for that be? Am I holding tension here? Okay, how can I fix that? So in short, notice, don't judge.
Chill out. Really, just chill out. It's going to be okay. If you miss a note, if something gets screwed up, it's okay. It's an opportunity. You'll learn. You'll get better. You've got a lot of determination. You've got a lot of focus. Don't be so hard on yourself. Don't beat yourself up. That would be the best advice I can give. It's funny along those lines. After I got in the job, I moved here about 7 weeks before I started, and I was practicing a lot. And I'm joining an orchestra that's, one of the finest orchestras on the planet. I'm going to be sitting next to a guy named David Zauder, who'd been there for 30 years, playing next to Bernie Edelstein, who's one of the great trumpet players ever. And, I got together with Dave maybe about a week and a half before we were going to start. And he had this big stack of music. Got down to the hall. Big stack of music we're going to go through. And my third week on the job was going to be Chaik 4. And we didn't tune, we just put it up and we just started. And it was as if he and I had been playing together for 10 years already. It just went bang. And it was so easy. And he just looked at me and went, okay, that I've heard all I need to hear. We've done what I came here to do. But then he said, I'm only going to give you one piece of advice in all of this. And that is the only pressure you're going to feel is the pressure you put on yourself. Everybody else, me, everybody is in your corner and wants to see you succeed. And I thought a lot about that because I had put a lot of pressure on myself when I was younger. I was very, very hard on myself. Things didn't go well. I would really beat myself up. And that to me is really the key. It's just so often we put pressure on ourselves. We make things a lot harder than they need to be. So if I could tell my young self anything, it would be just, dude, chill out. It's going to be fine. Just don't be so hard on yourself.
Work harder. Work harder. Pedal to the metal. I mean, but looking back, so many things you could do differently or not do, or but that's the advice I give myself.
Do lots of work on yourself. It's nobody is exempt from having to deal with issues that get in the way of learning. And again, I think it goes back to that noise. Like there's a lot of noise coming up in this time versus I grew up in the 70s and 80s. there wasn't as much noise, for sure. We didn't have Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. We sat and listened to records. We slowed down. So knowing that feeling, I think, gave me an advantage when I was younger, is to really digest the music I was listening to and to get obsessed with it. I literally was obsessed with characters in jazz, in jazz trumpet specifically. One month I was Lee Morgan. Maybe for a year I was pretending I was Freddie, even though I didn't have the chops. So to do that role playing was a little bit easier when I came up, because I had one record and maybe 3 other ones I'd get a couple months later. It wasn't like I could just scroll through, oh, that person's great, that person's not. So the judgment of other musicians that came along later in life, as I went through college and as I got older, I think as I saw this element of, not that I was judging, but having so much more to digest and being overwhelmed by that and going, where do I fit in all of this? I would tell my younger self that that the work was already being done to be myself. Just a matter of sorting out sounds and skills, and really dedicating myself to those moments of being myself in the playing, rather than thinking I had to be someone else. I don't know if that really makes much sense, but I think a lot of people in life, we get caught up with trying to emulate someone else's character without really doing the deep dive inside to see who they are. I see a lot of young players coming up who don't have this issue. They're over it. They're like, yeah, we got all this scrolling, but we can also put it down. So that's an exciting new place of human development that's coming along. I see it in my students at Manhattan. They're just amazing. They're already developed as characters, yet they know they have a lot to learn. So that balance between confidence and humility is what I would tell my younger self to make sure I had awareness of, and know that you don't have to know the answers, and know who you're going to be 20 years later. Just be yourself in the moment and play with what you've got, and keep asking questions.
Stop wasting your own time. Simple as that.
I look back on my time track, and I probably, if I could do it all over again, I probably wouldn't have spent so much time on the road. I was out there for about 35 years because it was easy. I just, one road gig after the next. I was known as a guy that you can hire him, he'll stay on the road with you for a long time. And I wish that I would have spent maybe only 5 or 10 years on the road, and I would have settled like in one of the major towns and done everything that I'm doing now, worked and practiced to be more of a well-rounded player. Now, it's like the things I can do is 10 times more than I could do when I was just out there with Harry Connick's band, which that was a great experience too. I mean, that was a great band, but I probably wouldn't have partied so much, and I wouldn't have stayed on the road so much. And giving the advice to my younger self, I'd say, don't do that. I mean, and there's a lot of things that I did that were the right decision too. I mean, constantly taking trumpet lessons with various players throughout my life, things don't work out so bad. I mean, things are actually pretty good right now, and I'm real happy. I'm a very happy person. If it's compared to the way it was when I was just out there alone, single on the road, and just on the road, I just kept on being on the road, man, and got kind of lost out there for a bit. But yeah, if I could do it all over again, I would have learned everything I've learned in the last 10 years since I've been here in Chicago. I would have learned that in the beginning, and that would open up a lot of doors for me as far as doing better quality sessions and being more of the part of the musical community, maybe in Los Angeles and in New York, than I was when I lived in LA. and I lived in New York, I was the best way I could describe it, I was based there. I was based in New York, and I'd go out on the road. And then I'd come back, and it's like I was actually one of the first call subs for the show Chicago, and I did that for about 7 years. And I would sub on Broadway shows, and I'd do sessions, but I was never really part of that community because I was just out on the road all the time. The same thing when I really started working a lot, and I come home to LA. I mean, I know everybody and I see everybody, but I wasn't really part of that community. I would have liked to have been able to become entrenched in the musical community of one of those places and just stay there and be part of everything that was going on. And I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have gotten off the road earlier. I have that here in Chicago.
I would give myself the advice that I practice really, really precise and concentrated, and to take it really serious, and especially in the very young years. I mean, I did that because my parents looked out for me, because when you are like 10 years old, you don't care about how you practice. I mean, I did not, but my mother always told me, practice good, then you don't have to practice so long, and you just need some person to remind you and to guide you when you are very young. And yeah, maybe that I took this advice more serious, because I did not really care so much. And other than that, to not worry so much, because I tend to worry very much, and it goes well in the end. So it not in kind of concerts, because that is fine, but in like how life is changing and stuff like that. So not only trumpet playing, but in general, because in the end, everything's going to be well and fine.
I was very stubborn and I didn't realize it. And so I think I was probably frustrating to teach, because my teachers would insist something, but I would only listen to the things that were addressing what I wanted to hear. I've worked with students that are this way, where they might think they have something that's important to address in their playing. And on one hand, it's fantastic, because you know that if you give them any guidance at all, they're going to tackle that, and they're going to use that as like nourishment to just like tackle that issue even more. But what's really hard, and I was really bad at this as a student, was actually listening to what the teacher was saying was the thing I needed. The hardest thing to do is realize that every person's perspective is a little bit different. And if you're studying with somebody that you respect, they're listening. They're not just playing better than you, hopefully, but they're hearing things better than you. And they're doing things in a way that's more effortless than you. It's like, it's all of that. It's not just how it sounds. And so I would sometimes play something and be like, oh, I could do it as good as my teacher could do it. And then feel like, well, why am I even going to listen to their advice? I'm kind of simplifying it. I wasn't that cocky, but that was my biggest weakness, because on one hand, it gave me confidence, and it made me have like, I was going to figure out how to get something done no matter what. I wasn't trusting their direction that they were trying to put me in. And so it just slowed things down. It didn't really matter too much, but I do know people that did that to the point where they just like veered way into the woods and like figured that out, but it's like, bye, and that's okay. But if you're trying to get the type of success that your teacher has and on whatever level, whether it's, career wise or playing wise, you want to be better at, trying to gain their insights and their hearing and not just their playing. So that's me talking to my little self.
I think maybe I would just like tell myself, it's gonna be fine. Just do your thing, and also I would tell myself that it's gonna be amazing. I do it on purpose, that I say that it's my job, that I do this, and because it's a lifestyle, but it is only my job, and it's been a dream since I was that 10-year-old little girl, wanting to do this. So I would also tell her that it's of course different than you thought, because there was no way you could even imagine what it was like, but it is amazing.
When you're in a band and just starting out, there's a lot of other things that used to enter into it, as far as, let's be honest, some substance abuse, as it's called now. I got rid of that really pretty early. Luckily, I was lucky. My brother wasn't so lucky, but when he did get rid of it, he was a leading person in the 12-step program. I was very proud of him and saved many people's lives. We were both lucky that we got rid of that aspect of music, even though it was fun to play like that. I don't think we played any better. So that's the first thing. I might not want to run a jazz club for 10 years. When we were younger, from 1977 to 87, probably don't get many answers like this. We ran 7th Avenue South with some partners, and it was a lot of fun to play there, but that was a lot of extra time, and whatever money we took in, that went into the club. I remember about a month after it was open, we each took a $100 bill out of the cash register, and that was the only money we ever got out of that club in 10 years. We just were paying this, paying that agency, paying this guy, paying that guy. So that wasn't a great move, but once again, it was a lot of fun, and a lot of great music was made there, and a lot of history. As far as the trumpet, I just wish I had had more discipline and a better place. I was always living in apartments. I had a loft for several years. Now that was cool because I could practice in there. But after I got married to my first wife, I moved to an apartment, and I had a back room. But now I live in a house, and I wish I had not tried to practice in so many apartments where you had to stop at a certain hour. This is just heaven that we live 2 hours out of town, and I can play all night if I want. And I'm a night person, so like I said before, I start late, usually, not super late, but I like playing into the morning, pretend it's a club gig, and turn down the lights a little, put on a good record to play along with. So those are some of the things. I just wish I had the knowledge and the wisdom, let's say that I had when I was young, and none of us do. It's very rare. Just in 2 words, just more discipline as far as the horn.
Oh man, that was so many years ago. You have to be realistic, and you have to, to change the past is impossible, and to predict the future is also impossible. My philosophy always has been, today, these 24 hours, try to do the best as I can in every sense. Try to do the best I can. But whatever happened in the past, I cannot change that. I cannot, and in every situation, I was trying to act according to what I thought I was okay. But who knows, with the experience I have now, what I could do when I was 25 years old. Who knows? I don't know. I have no relation, I'm gonna tell you a joke that is a good philosophy in life. It said, if you want to see God laughing very hard, tell him about your plans.
Wow, such incredible advice from everyone. And if there was something that particularly resonated with you, let me know in the comments below. I'm really interested, to know what you responded to. And while you're at it, why don't you hit that like and subscribe? It really makes a very big difference. Now, there were so many things that kept being brought up that were mentioned by so many players. These common themes that I absolutely loved, including being honest to who you are, not being too hard on yourself, the idea that we are not what we do. We may play the trumpet, but we are also an individual. And not worrying so much. This is common themes that so many of these players mentioned, and all this is amazing advice in both music and in life. Now, today we heard advice for our past self. In the next video, we are coming to the present. In a world that is increasingly busy with increasing amounts of distractions, I thought it was really important to ask the following question. How do you deal with the ever-increasing distractions during practice? Now, this next video is filled with tips and advice that will help you focus and reclaim your practice sessions. All right, that's all I've got for you today. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.